The floodwaters recede and the ark recedes. A global catastrophe has concluded, leaving Noah and his family as the sole survivors on a silent planet. In this environment, survival logic dictates a clear set of priorities. You need to build shelter, secure a food supply, and protect your remaining livestock to ensure a future for the species. This diagram compares that logical timeline against the specific sequence in Genesis 8:20. Noah's first recorded action bypasses every immediate physical necessity. He builds an altar, a mizbeh. Modern psychological frameworks like Maslow's hierarchy suggest that humans must secure physiological safety and food before they can attend to spiritual needs. Noah's sequence places worship at the very bottom of that pyramid, making it the most basic requirement for life. In this biblical framework, worship is a costly mechanism used to establish a covenant relationship. It is the primary means of interacting with the Creator before any other work begins. To understand how this sacrifice functions, we have to look at the specific Hebrew terminology used to describe Noah's offering. Genesis 8:20 identifies two specific components of Noah's action, the specific resources he utilized, and the method of their destruction. First, the resources. Noah selects from the Behemah Tehor, ritually pure, clean animals. He is pulling from a tiny, bottlenecked population of survivors that represents the entire future of these species. Destroying breeding stock on a devastated planet is a mathematically significant risk. Each animal sacrificed is a permanent loss of potential food and reproduction for a family struggling to restart civilization. Second, the method. Noah offers an olah, or burnt offering, derived from the Hebrew root meaning to go up. We see this visualized here as the sacrifice transforming into ascending smoke. In many ancient cultures, the worshiper would eat a portion of the sacrificial meat, gaining physical nourishment from the ritual. The olah requires 100% consumption by fire. Noah gains zero physical utility from these animals. The ritual represents a state of total surrender, where the entirety of the gift is yielded to God. This establishes the core economic principle of the altar. Meaningful worship involves a genuine cost that places the relationship with God above physical security. With the sacrifice complete on the ground, the narrative shifts to the divine reaction in heaven. This diagram illustrates the interaction recorded in verse 21. The text states that God smelled, or ruach, the sacrifice. The term ruach functions here as a theological description of God actively validating the worshipper's posture. It indicates that the human action has successfully reached its intended destination. This intersection generates a reach nikok, translated as a pleasing aroma or an acceptable fragrance to the divine. God finds satisfaction in the voluntary gratitude of a worshiper offering their best from a limited supply. The physical death of the animal is the medium, but the heart's devotion is the message. This dynamic reveals that God prioritizes the relational posture of the individual. He values heartfelt thanksgiving over the mechanical efficiency of the ritual itself. This divine satisfaction leads to a specific decision. The pleasing aroma triggers a resolve within God's own heart. In this logic model, we see God speaking Amar el Libo, in his heart, to formulate a systemic response to Noah's altar. On the left, God acknowledges a difficult reality. The flood did not remove the stain of human sin. Even after the judgment, the intention of the human heart remains ra menurav, evil from youth. However, the right side of the model shows a pivot of grace. God issues an emphatic promise of lo osef, never again. He establishes a barrier of restraint against future global destruction. God commits to maintaining the natural order, seasons, harvests, and cycles of day and night, while fully anticipating that humanity will continue to fail. Grateful worship triggers a divine pivot. It serves as the mechanism that moves God to mercy, allowing his restraint to override strict requirements of justice. In Genesis chapter 9, God's internal resolve becomes a binding universal covenant, a berith, extended to every living creature. The physical sign of this agreement is the kesheth, which we translate as a rainbow. In the ancient world, the word kesheth is not a meteorological term. It refers to a weapon of war, the bow of an archer or a warrior. This produces a profound visual theology. God takes his weapon of judgment, retires it from the field of battle, and hangs it in the sky, pointing away from the earth and toward himself. This pattern, where a costly sacrifice secures a lasting covenant, establishes the framework for the entire biblical story. The Apostle Paul utilizes this lexicon in Romans 12:1, urging believers to offer their own bodies as a living sacrifice. They are to become the Olah, yielding their lives entirely to God's service. Ephesians 5:2 identifies Jesus Christ as the ultimate fulfillment of this system. He gave himself up as a fragrant offering, the final and perfect Rishei Nikoach that secures an eternal covenant. Noah's altar shows that biblical worship is more than an emotional expression. It is a voluntary, sacrificial act that actively shapes our standing before God.